Wilson, a Democratic strategist and Senate political commentator. She is in Washington. And from Los Angeles, California, is Larry Elder, host of the Larry Elder radio show on KABC. So, Larry, I promised that you would get to rebut, if you will, what Hillary said. We talked about the Values Voter Summit taking place in Washington. Before you respond, I want you to listen to this from Ben Carson. He's a physician and a well-known conservative activist, and he said this today about Obamacare.
And I have to tell you, Obamacare is really, I think, the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery. And it is, in a way, it is slavery, in a way, because it is making all of us subservient to the government. And it was never about health care, it was about control.
Okay, Larry, I think a lot of people would say, I think 9/11 was pretty bad. I think, the theater shooting in Aurora, Colorado was pretty bad. I think that, the Pan Am jet bombing was pretty bad. I mean, is Obamacare worse than those things, compared to the worst thing since slavery?
Don, I spoke with Dr. Carson on my show yesterday, and I think he was referring to legislation, not incidents. And as far as legislation is concerned, tells every man, woman, and child to buy a product whether they want it or not. And before the break, Hillary said that Obamacare was becoming increasingly popular, and I suspect that's probably true because of the way the media has been maligning the Republican Party, the way Republicans have been using terms like hijacking, and Harry Reid has referred to Tea Party Republicans as anarchists. But because legislation is popular doesn't mean it's good. Minimum wage laws are popular, but many economists believe that when the minimum wage laws went into effect in 1938, 500,000 young black people lost their jobs. So just because something is popular, it seems to me you still have a moral obligation, if you think it's wrong, to stand up and say, no, we're going to try and stop it.
Okay, Larry, listen, I'm not going to defend the Democratic Party. I'll let Hillary do that, but I'm going to defend the media, at least here. I think the Republican Party is doing a pretty good job of maligning themselves, and I don't think they're helping their case at all, because the Republican Party...
Don, I'm sorry.
I'm not finished my thought yet. I'm not finished my thought yet, Larry. The Republican Party are the ones who shut down the government, and specifically the Tea Party faction of the Republican Party shut down the government. And it doesn't make sense to anyone, and I'm sure most Republicans either, that you get on television and that you're upset because there are parts of the government that are shut down. Veterans can't go to parks. They can't get benefits. Well, then that's what happens when you shut the government down, so you can't blame it on anyone else but yourselves.
Don, the House, the bills, let me finish, please. Bills originate in the House. There have been 18 shutdowns since 1976. 15 of them involved Democrats who control the House. In this particular case, if Harry Reid put a clean bill in front of the Senate and said we're going to fund all the measures of government except for Obamacare, we're going to delay Obamacare for a year, or this, that, or the other, the majority of people in the Senate would sign on to that as well. So don't tell me just because Boehner won't send a bill to the House, therefore Republicans are stopping this. Reid won't send a bill to the Senate either.
This is why it was irresponsible, and everybody. This is why it was irresponsible. Everybody knows it, and the polls show that everybody knows it.
Yes,
simply because you have a law that is a signature program just getting started, was never going to be amended, was never going to be defunded. The Republicans knew it and insisted on shutting down the government anyway. So that's not negotiations. That's just foolhardy. But let's kind of go back. I don't think that we can let Ben Carson off the hook and saying that Obamacare is the worst thing since slavery. You know what? When 50% of food stamps are going to feed children and the Republicans will not pass food stamp legislation in the House, that's the worst thing. When sexual assaults in the military are going at an astounding rate and Congress is not addressing that, that's the worst thing. How dare him suggest that a law that actually goes to help 30 million people who do not have health care is the worst thing, is exactly what is wrong with, Ben Carson and his Fox contributor friends and the Republican Party, who is so out of touch with regular people's needs that's why we are in the situation we're in.
And Larry, he did not say, you said legislation, you spoke with him. He needs to clarify that, because he did not say legislation. He said it's the worst thing. He didn't say legislation.
Well,
I think,
Don,
listen,
however,
I want you to respond to this. I think Hillary has a point. If you look at the polls show that most people blame Republicans. And if you look at the latest Gallup poll, it shows that Republicans are losing favor 10 points from a month ago. I think it's down to 28% from 38% approval rating. The Republican brand is in trouble, and everyone is looking at the Republican brand except for Republicans.
Let me suggest this. The stock market is up about 300 points because they believe there's going to be some sort of resolution on the shutdown and maybe even on the debt limit. Let me ask you something. If in the unlikely event that President Obama walked out on the Rose Garden, flanked by Harry Reid and John Boehner, and said, we have all decided that Obamacare is a bad idea. People are losing hours. People are getting their hours cut under 29 hours. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal today by a CEO of a restaurant saying Obamacare was a bad idea. So we're going to start all over again. What would happen to the stock market? It would be up 500 points the next day.
You know,
so, but
no
and monkeys can fly. I mean, what are you talking? I don't understand. What does that mean?
My point is that Obamacare is.
There's no evidence of this, and you ought to let the law work to see what the problem is before you make a charge like that, because the CEOs that are complaining about it, you know, are bringing it to an ideological perspective. And guess what? CEOs may want to cut back on health care, but finally, they've been doing that for the last 10 years. The trend has been going down on coverage for employees getting health care from their bosses. And that's why we need Obamacare, not the other way around.
Thank you. Listen, obviously,
74% of small business people
think that we need
74% of small business people believe that Obamacare is a bad idea.
And Larry, that's not true. That's not true, because they wanted it. So
What's
many
not
people
true?
wanted it. Many people wanted it to be stronger when it came to single payer. So it all depends on the way you ask the question. I will give you that a lot of people don't like.
I said 74%.
Listen, I will give you a lot of
small business people don't like
Obamacare. But here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing. Larry, someone who is independent, I'm telling you, the Republican Party needs to take a good, long look in the mirror over this issue. And I don't understand why you guys can't see this. You are ruining your brand. You need brand management, okay?
No, they want to die on the Hill to prevent people from getting health insurance.
Yeah.
That's what Larry just said. I want to die on the Hill for it.
Great talk. We'll continue it.
Doctors don't like Obamacare. Dr. Carson doesn't like Obamacare. He represents a lot of doctors.
That I was watching that, and I was really confounded about what you meant. How can you compare a health care program to the brutal oppression and abuse of black people in this country?
Okay, I can tell you very easily. First of all, if you listen carefully to what I said it's the worst thing since slavery. Now, there are those who will say he said it's equivalent to slavery, who probably don't understand how the English language works. And it's sort of like the kid on the playground at school who runs over to one kid and says, he's talking about your mama. And then he goes to the other, he's talking about your mama, so that they can get in a fight, rather than actually concentrating on the issue. The issue here is that we have turned over to the government the most important thing we have, which is our health and our health care. And for those who are well-read, they will know that many people who have not had the interest of the United States at heart have advocated making the population dependent in order to achieve the, quote, utopian society.
All right, let me jump in there, because you said who have not had, you said, I understand where you're going. You said, and the best way to do that is to control people through health care. But you're saying that these have been influenced by people who didn't have America's best interests at heart. Are you saying the president and this administration don't have Americans' best interests at heart?
No,
they're trying to get people health coverage?
No, I'm talking about the neo-Marxist. This literature is easy to find.
I know, but you're comparing it to the Obama administration and to Obamacare.
What I am saying is factual, historical information. Now, you can make whatever allusions you'd like to make to it in order to try to inflame the situation. But
I'm not trying to inflame the situation. I'm trying to understand it, because you're saying you're not talking about the Obama administration, but you're comparing Obamacare to that, and you're saying the way that people have been controlled is through
I'm
that
comparing
method.
Obamacare to what? What am I comparing Obamacare?
Well, you compared it to slavery. You said in a way it is slavery because you use it to control people.
Did I just tell you that it's not the worst thing since? that it's not comparable to slavery.
But
slavery is a horrible, horrible thing. I can tell you a lot of things about it, but the reason that this is the next worst thing is because it is taking the most important thing that you have and subjecting it to control by the government. That is the first step to government control of everything. And again, this is something that is easily verifiable by those who are historical, who indulge in reading
Here's where
history.
most people would take issue, because they would say that Jim Crow is pretty bad, that World War II is pretty bad, that Vietnam was pretty bad, that D-Day was pretty bad, that Iraq was pretty bad, that Japanese internment camps were pretty bad. All these things were terrible, and they have happened since slavery. And you say Obamacare is worse than all of those things?
I do say that, yes. All of those things are bad, but those do not fundamentally change the United States.
Okay.
This is the beginning of a fundamental change of moving away from a government that is for of and by the people to a government that is for of and by the government. It flies in the face of what America is all about.
Okay, I want to move on now to the VA scandal, and I want to read what you said about the scandal at the VA just last month. And you said, I think that what's happening with the veterans is a gift from God to show us what happens when you take layers and layers of bureaucracy and place them between the patients and the healthcare providers. A gift from God? I mean, granted, no one thinks that the VA functions properly, but veterans who serve this country may have died waiting for care. Do you regret at all saying that?
Well, let me tell you exactly what that means, because most people know exactly what I'm talking about. It demonstrates to us very easily, without a lot of subterfuge, what happens when you place layers and layers of bureaucrats between patients and between the healthcare providers. It makes it crystal clear what's going to happen. That's why it's a gift from God to be able to show that to people. Now, I know that some left-wing people have said, Carson said that God wants veterans to die, but I don't think anybody with any sense actually believes that.
I know, but Doctor, you just said that you think that the rhetoric should be toned down in this country, and you can't go over and say, I said this about you. But when you use comparisons like that and words like that, then you're ratcheting up the rhetoric. You don't think so?
It only ratchets up the rhetoric when people try to misinterpret it. When people listen to what I'm saying, it doesn't ratchet up the rhetoric at all.